On April the 20th of this year, an oil rig blew up in the Gulf of Mexico, killing about 11 persons. On April the 27th, it was discovered that a major oil spill was taking place. And ever since then, we have been inundated in the news about this oil leak. The oil rig was owned by British Petroleum, better known as BP, and it will go down as one of the most expensive and the most damaging as far as the environment is concerned, not only in United States history, but in world history. With millions of, not gallons, but barrels, leaking in the Gulf of Mexico daily, coastlines along Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida will feel the effects of this for at least 25 to 30 years, if not longer. The unfortunate reality is that our country's desire for oil, coupled with the increasing world demand, has accelerated the call for us to look for alternative energy sources. This dreadful ordeal in the Gulf of Mexico will lead to sea life being destroyed, birds being covered in oil, and sandy, white, brown, and yellow beaches being covered in black turmoils and oil slicks. We got to, y'all, look for other sources of energy to shore up our greed. We have to investigate and experiment with other resources like solar and wind to lessen our dependence on fossil fuels like oil and gas. However, as quiet as it's kept, the oil spill did not have to happen. When President Bush was in office, he was friendly with the oil companies. He did not regulate them like he should have. And unfortunately, a lot of corners got cut and a lot of regulations slipped through the cracks. One of the regulations that could have been imposed and put in place is a mechanism called the acoustical regulator, which is a remotely triggered dead man switch that would have closed off the gushing well at the sea floor. But BP did not want to spend an extra $500,000 when they were making millions of dollars every day. Now we have this mess in the Gulf of Mexico that could have been prevented, but no one is really reporting that because, unfortunately, that is an inconvenient truth. Back in 2006, former Vice President Al Gore created an award-winning documentary entitled An Inconvenient Truth, whereby Gore engages in a campaign to educate us about the impact of global warming that some people say aren't taking place. But every time I look at crazy weather patterns, I have to admit that something is going on, and it ain't all God's doing. His contention is that unless we stop putting so much carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, the world as we know it will come to an end. But you and I have the power and the capacity to reverse greenhouse gases and reduce our carbon footprint upon the environment. The problem with what former Vice President Gore is sharing messes with how you and I conduct our daily lives. We don't want to give up the conveniences that we have. We don't want to go back, and we will not go back to the days of the horse and buggy, kerosene lamps, and outhouses. But what he has dropped on us is really an inconvenient truth. Inconvenient truths are those things we don't want to hear, but we know they're true, and they mess with us. We don't want to deal with it, but eventually the truth will turn us upside down and right side up. And yet the problem with a lot of churches and a problem with a lot of people in the world today is, Deacon Bailey, they don't want to really hear the truth. In fact, the reason why we are mired in mediocrity, stuck in silliness, walking in worldliness, and hanging out in our hellish conditions is because we don't want to hear the truth. And and then when it's presented, we get all mad and we disregard it. Now, you got to understand, beloved, there is a difference between what is factual and what is truth. Facts are indisputable, objective pieces of reality that we look at and we make a judgment call upon. But truth is something or somebody who is not just not factually accurate, but totally honest, because they have a unified expression of word, deed, motive, and emotion. So when we talk about this thing called inconvenient truth, it supports my contention that we got too many Christians who no longer want to believe that the Bible is the authentic, authoritative word of God. We want to create our own script. We want to write our own gospel. We no longer have an understanding or appreciation for doctrine. That's why we listen to some of this crazy mess on television and then try to govern our lives by it. We don't want to talk about spiritual growth and development. Too many of us, from the pulpit to the back door, are searching for quick fixes for long-term issues. And unfortunately, we got church folks who are under the erroneous assumption that money will solve all their problems. Too many of us think that you can have a meaningful, powerful, transformative, and transcendent relationship with God and not sacrifice any time, energy, and ego to become congruent to the word, the will, and the way of God. In other words, we want facts, but we don't really want the truth.